Hey, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into the opening verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. It's the longest chapter in the Quran, and what's amazing is what it reveals not just about faith, but about the actual psychology of belief itself. So let's get right into it.
Right out of the gate, this chapter does something incredible. It doesn't just start with rules or stories. It starts by establishing a whole worldview. It looks at every single one of us, all of humanity, and starts sorting us into a few distinct categories based on how we respond to a divine message. It really sets the stage for everything that comes after.
And this immediately brings up a huge question, right? It's something people have wondered about forever. What makes one person hear a message and be completely open to it, while someone else hears the exact same thing and just shuts down, rejects it completely? How can the same information lead to such opposite outcome?
Well, what's so fascinating is that the answer we're going to explore isn't just about, theology or destiny. It's actually deeply rooted in our own psychology. It's about how our minds work, the stories we tell ourselves, and the mental roadblocks we sometimes build.
So let's start where the surah starts, with this foundational breakdown of humanity. The opening verses lay out three core groups of people.
The surah lays out these three groups. First, you've got the believers, al-mu'minun, who hear the message and accept it. Then you have the disbelievers, al-kafirun, who openly and actively reject it. And finally, you have the hypocrites, who say they believe but don't, really. So you've got one group that's on the path, and two groups that, for very different reasons, are not.
Now, to really get inside the mindset of these groups, we first have to understand something about ourselves. We need to look at how we, as human beings, make sense of the world. And the key, really, is narrative. It's all about stories.
Seriously, our brains are just wired for stories. It's how we process everything. If you look at the most popular stories across every culture, throughout all of history, you start to see this incredible pattern emerge. The stories that really stick with us, the ones that become massive hits, they all share a very similar structure.
And that structure is often like a triangle. You've got a hero, someone we can all relate to. Then you've got a villain to create conflict. And finally, you have a savior or some kind of moral code that shows us the right way. This isn't just in old books. This framework is used everywhere, from Hollywood blockbusters to political ads, because it's just that powerful at getting an idea to stick.
So this brings us to a really important point. When we talk about religion and guidance, the word faith gets thrown around a lot. But is it the same as blind faith? The interpretation we're looking at makes a very critical distinction here.
So, here's the big question. Does this guidance demand that you just believe without asking questions? That you just accept things without any reasoning? Well, according to the perspective we're exploring, the answer to that is a hard no.
And this difference is absolutely crucial. Belief, or iman, is presented as a conclusion you reach because of reasoning and evidence. For instance, you believe you have great-great-grandparents, right? You've never seen them, but the evidence, your parents, your grandparents, it all leads to a logical conclusion. Faith without evidence, on the other hand, is when you hold a position without that kind of logical backing.
And the point here is this: the burden of proof is on the person making the claim. It's their job to bring the evidence, to provide the reasoning. It's not the listener's job to just accept things blindly. The invitation is to think, to reason, and then to believe.
Okay, so this brings us to one of the most misunderstood concepts in these verses, this idea of a sealed heart. Is this some act of fate, or is there a psychological reason behind it?
This is the verse that can cause a lot of confusion. It's describing a group of people, and it says that warnings just have no effect on them. Now, on the surface, that can really sound like they are just fated to disbelieve no matter what. So we have to ask, does this mean some people are just born without the ability to believe? Is their fate sealed by some divine decree before they even get a chance to choose?
But what if it's not fatalistic at all? This interpretation suggests the seal isn't something that's forced on a person. It's actually a psychological state that we get ourselves into through our own choices. Maybe it's arrogance, that feeling of, I already know everything. Or maybe it's a kind of numbness you get from hearing a message so many times it just becomes background noise. Or it could be a moral block that we build up over time through our actions.
And it's so important to understand what the Quran means when it says the heart. It's not talking about the organ in your chest. It's a metaphor for our core consciousness. It's the seat of our choices, our desires, our intellect, and our morality. So a sealed heart is really a sealed mind, a mind that has chosen to close itself off.
So if disbelief is a psychological state and not a divine decree, what does that mean for believers? well, it completely shifts the focus. It puts a huge responsibility right on the shoulders of anyone who wants to share the message.
The takeaway here is profound. If someone isn't getting it, if the guidance isn't connecting with them, the first thing to do isn't to blame them. The first thing to do is to look at ourselves and ask, how am I delivering this message?
Think about it with this analogy. There are no bad students. There are always bad teachers. If a child doesn't understand a math theorem, is it the child's fault? Or has the teacher just not found the right way to explain it yet? It's the same logic here. The responsibility is on the teacher to understand the listener's mindset and actually address their questions with real, clear reasoning.
And that leaves all of us with a final, really challenging question to ask ourselves. When we share our deepest beliefs, are we truly doing it with empathy and reason? Are we trying to break down those mental blocks? Or are we just repeating words over and over until they don't mean anything anymore? And maybe, inadvertently, helping to create that very seal we hope to open. It's something to think about. Thanks for joining me.